Hello everyone, welcome back to this tutorial on Voiceflow. In the last video we were able to run our flow and extract the username from the user. Now we would like to repeat basically the same steps and retrieve the user rating and the user comment. Okay, let's begin. So we do the same thing. We use a message step. In this case, we can say something like, "Nice to meet you." Now, so before we proceed, right, it makes sense, right, for, let's say you meet someone, the person introduces themselves, you can say, "Nice to meet you," with their name, right, at the end of that sentence. So if you meet someone called Michael, right, you should expect, one of the things you can expect the other person to say is, "Nice to meet you, Michael," right? So in this same vein, right, you can do the same thing in Voiceflow using the curly braces that I explained in the last video. So if I click on I search for username inside the curly brace, right, that achieves that purpose, right? Then I can then say on a scale of 1 to 5, how would you rate our service, right? So basically what you should expect, if the user's name is Michael, you should expect, "Nice to meet you, Michael. On a scale of 1 to 5, how would you rate our service?" Right? So this gives it that natural feel. And then we can also generate variants for this. So we generate 3. Great. So now that we've done that, we also want to capture the user's response, right? So we can just say, so we use the capture step, sorry, and we can just move it into here as well. Then we can create a new entity, and the new entity's name will be user rating, right? Then the type will be a number because it's a number between 1 to 5. So if I create the entity now, so we have the user rating entity. Great. So can just move this here and then connect this. We repeat the same step for the user comment. So we can drag this over and then come type the question, which is, we didn't name this block, so we can name this block get rating. Again, it's not it's not by force, so it's not mandatory for you to name these blocks, but just for documentation sakes, right, you can decide to name them. Okay, so you can then say, "Michael, any comments or suggestions to help improve our services?" Right? So this is 1. Then we generate the variants. Oh, what's happening? Okay, generate the variants. Oh, okay. Let me reload. I think it's misbehaving again. Okay. Yeah. So let me delete all these. Okay, so let's do that again. Generate 3 variants. Yep, great. So it works fine now. Okay, so now we can create another entity using the capture step. And this time the entity we want to create is the user comment. and this would be of type, so we would use key phrase here because that's like the most similar or the most appropriate out of all the various data types we have on Voiceflow at the moment. So create entity. Now that we've done that, we can then connect this here as well. Then oh, what's going on here? Okay, had to refresh again. Don't know what happened there. So now that we're done with these parts, so we've gathered all the information we need: username, user rating, and user comment. Now remember on our rating sheet, the last column was the timestamp, or is the timestamp, right, which represents the exact time that the user gave this rating. So one way we can achieve this, right, and the easiest way in my own opinion, is to use the set step, right? So we'll set the time. Now how are we going to set the time? This is starting to get a bit annoying. Okay, so we use the set step. Now let's click on this and then variables to set. So we want to set a variable to, so you can set a variable to either a value or an expression, or then you can set a variable to a prompt, right? So we'll look into prompts later, but for now let's click variable or expression, right? Then for the variable to set, we need to create a new variable, right? So let's call this user timestamp, right? So this is a variable. It's slightly different from an entity. An entity usually has a data type, but a variable is something that we store within Voiceflow. So whatever data type of what we are trying to store is what it will assume, right? So we have that. So that's one. So we can set this user timestamp by ourselves. Maybe you can say something like 27/06/2025. You could do that, right? Or you could set it to an expression. Now this expression is a JavaScript expression, right? So we'll use this JavaScript expression for this tutorial, right? And it's a very simple expression actually. So it's just an expression to get the date, the current date, like the exact date and time, right, that we are in at the moment. So it's just new, then date is pretty intuitive, right? So you have the date function, a new function, so basically give us a new date, right? Date object, then dot to local string, that is convert that date into a string, right? And then in the US locale, that kind of thing. So that's basically what that does. So it will set this, so every time you run this flow, the user timestamp will always be set to whatever value this expression rounds off to, or becomes. So that's basically how that works. So now the next step would be for us to send this information via the API step as described in the first introductory video. So what do we do now? We just come to our dev, and then, okay, before we do that, right, so we know that this is just, these three steps are just replications of the same, basically the same process. So we know that these will work normally, right? But we need to test this as well. We need to know if this actually works, right? So again, the easiest way to do that is to just use a message step. I don't know what's going on with Voiceflow today. Okay, so we can then proceed to print out this user timestamp value. So you can just say the timestamp is, and then user timestamp. There we go. So now let's run this just to be sure that it works. In fact, we don't even need to run the entire thing. We can just start from here because we are setting the user timestamp from this block here. So we can just click this and it should start from there. So you can see the timestamp is this, right? So meaning that this is the current time at the moment. So that's good. Now, yeah, we can also rename this block if we want. That would be set timestamp. Then, yeah, and that's that about that. Then we can delete this. What's going on? Okay. Okay, so we can then proceed to add our API step, right? So I didn't mention this before, but there are different requests that you can send with an API. So there's the get request, the post request, the put, patch, and delete, right? So the post request is the one we use with Postman, right? You can also use the get request, put, patch, delete, all these within Postman as well, and also within the curl command that we used on our CMD. So, but majorly the ones we would use for this tutorial are get and post, right? So get request just basically helps us extract information from the Google Sheet or from whatever API we are trying to connect to, and post request helps us to send information, right? And we're trying to send information here, so this has to be a post request. Now the URL is the same as what we have in SheetBest. Oh, we need to sign in again. Okay. So let's open this up. Yeah, copy this link. And then we can just drop this here. So that's the first one. Then the next thing you want to do is to add the headers. If you remember, we did something called -h. So here it is, if you remember. So we have the post, then we have the link, then we have the header, content type application JSON, right? So that's what we need to do now. So content type, all right, application/JSON, right? Then the next thing now is the body. What do you want to send? It's not form data we want to send. We want to send raw data, right? And then the raw data is JSON, right? Good. So now we can test this out initially to see if it'll work, right? So I'll copy and paste some values now and you'll see them. Yeah, so now I've pasted some values here, right? So you can see name, Lex Luthor, rating 0.5, something that Lex Luthor would do, I think. Right? And then yeah, that's basically it. And then we can test our post request to be sure that it actually works, right? That this link actually works. Same thing we did with Postman and the curl command on CMD. So if I send this now, you can see it returns a 200 OK. And if I go to the rating sheet, you can see Lex Luthor has been Lex Luthor's entry has been entered into the ratings Google Sheet. So that is that about that for now. Thank you very much for watching. We will continue with this post request later, so we'll combine this with our workflow and then see how it all works together. So we're almost done. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.